Welcome back to this explainer. We're on episode 6 today, Parasurama, strategic disruption. Over our previous sessions, we've looked at avatars that navigated, stabilized, and outmaneuvered. They all essentially worked with the world as it was, nudging it toward what it needed to become. But sometimes a completely different kind of leadership is required for a very different kind of crisis. The sixth avatar, he doesn't preserve, he destroys, but not out of mindless anger. He does it because he understands with absolute terrifying clarity that the corruption has just gone way too deep. So today, we're exploring the leadership of necessary destruction.
Okay, let's dive into this. There's a very harsh reality we need to face as leaders. There are moments, both in the life of an organization and honestly, in the life of a leader, when reform is simply no longer possible. It's when the decay has spread so completely through the roots that there's literally nothing left to fix. You can't restructure it. You can't just cross your fingers and wait for it to change from the inside. In these incredibly heavy moments, sometimes the only responsible leadership choice you have is to clear the ground entirely.
Let's look at part 1, the myth of Parasurama, the Brahmin who became a warrior. To really grasp this profound shift, we need to define two absolutely crucial concepts. First, the Kshatriya. These were the warrior kings, historically meant to be the protectors of dharma, or righteous duty. But over generations, they had completely forgotten their duty. They became arrogant, unaccountable predators. The corruption was a deep, generational rot, which meant incremental reform was impossible. And then we have the Parashu. This is the divine axe, gifted by Lord Shiva to a highly learned, peaceful Brahmin named Rama, transforming him into Parasurama. Think about that. A man of peace handed the ultimate instrument of disruption. The breaking point is a powerful story. It happened when a corrupt Kshatriya king visited the peaceful forest hermitage of Parasurama's father, the sage Jamadagni. The king spotted their divine, wish-fulfilling cow, Kamadhenu, and, feeling entitled, just took her by force. Parasurama retaliated to get her back, but the kings returned and brutally murdered his unarmed father in cold blood. When Parasurama found his father, his grieving mother Renika beat her chest exactly 21 times. Parasurama watched, and he counted every single blow. In that moment, he made a very calculated, bounded vow. 21 times. For 21 rounds, he would sweep the earth to completely clear out this entrenched, toxic aristocracy. And he actually did it. Parasurama fulfilled his vow, waging 21 rounds of war. But here is the fascinating part. He didn't make himself king afterwards. Instead, he walked to the edge of the ocean and he threw his divine axe into the sea. The waters actually receded, creating the completely new land of Konkan. You see, he knew exactly when to stop. This is the ultimate test of this kind of leadership. A tyrant never puts the axe down, but a true leader, they step away the exact moment the ground is cleared. Which brings us to part 2, the management mirror. The 5 principles of necessary destruction. Let's unpack truth number 1. You have to recognize when a system can no longer reform itself. As a leader, you must see when an organization's toxic culture is actually using its own rules to prevent accountability. When the exact people who need to change are the ones controlling whether change even happens, well, incremental reform is just a delusion at that point. Arriving at the decision to clear the ground isn't defeatism, it's clarity. Truth number 2. Righteous destruction is disciplined, not emotional. This is absolutely crucial. We are not talking about explosive, uncontrolled dismantling here. It's not about punishing people because you're frustrated. True strategic disruption requires defining the exact scope of the dismantling through exhaustive analysis. It's a conscious, deliberate commitment. It has to be as disciplined as Parasurama's carefully counted 21 rounds. Then we have truth number 3, and this is a huge warning. Do not become what you destroyed. This is arguably the most common trap in massive organizational overhauls. Don't tear down a corrupt, bureaucratic institution only to build a shiny new one that's centered completely around your own unchecked authority. Remember, the tools of destruction are not the tools of construction. Moving on to truth number 4. The axe creates the land. Know what it is for before you lift the axe. Every single act of clearing out must be guided by a clear vision. You aren't just removing people or aggressively cutting costs just for the sake of it, right? The clearing creates space, so you must have a rock-solid commitment to what that new ground is going to be used for way before you ever swing the axe. And finally, truth number 5. Know you're 21. Know when to stop.
Righteous destruction does not naturally limit itself. It requires an externally defined boundary. A leader must define the exact boundary of the clearing in advance. What precisely needs to end? You need to state it clearly, and when the work is finally done, you have to honor your commitment to stop. Put the axe down. Let's move to part 3, case study, the 1991 reforms and the clearing of the license Raj. To really ground these 5 truths in a concrete reality, let's look at the Indian economic crisis of 1991. Just to put this into perspective, India's foreign exchange reserves had plummeted so drastically that they could support only a few weeks of imports. A few weeks. The situation was so dire, so absolutely critical, that the government was literally forced to pledge its gold reserves to the Bank of England. The existing administrative structure was just systematically strangling the country's potential, and it was actively blocking every single incremental attempt to fix it. And this is what brilliantly illustrates our Parasurama framework in action. Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, they didn't just tweak the system, they cleared it. The heavily centralized, permit-driven system known as the License Raj was systematically dismantled. Import licensing was abolished. The economy was suddenly opened up to open investment. It was a very precise, bounded clearing of the specific areas that were strangling growth. During his now famous 1991 budget speech, Dr. Manmohan Singh actually quoted Victor Hugo, saying that no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. This perfectly connects to the framework. They cleared the ground because they knew exactly what the new land was meant to support. They weren't just tearing down a broken system for the fun of it. They were deliberately making space for a new, liberalized economy to actually take root. Which brings us to part 4, put the axe down, the aftermath. Because those leaders had the incredible discipline to clear out the exact right areas and then stop, the economy stabilized. The gold actually came home, and it opened the path to 3 decades of transformative growth. So let's anchor these 5 principles into memory right now. Number 1, diagnose honestly when a system cannot be reformed. 2, define the scope of your disruption beforehand. 3, execute with rigorous discipline. 4, know exactly what the newly cleared ground is for. And 5, put the axe down. I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative reflection today. Think about the most entrenched dysfunction in your own organization. Has it reached a point where it literally uses its own rules to protect itself from correction? If your honest answer to that is yes, what would a disciplined clearing look like? And most importantly, what will you do with the axe when your 21st round is done? That capacity to destroy responsibly, it requires incredible clarity. In our next Explainer, Episode 7, we're shifting gears. We'll move from necessary destruction to the heavy burden of duty as we explore the story of Rama, the ideal ruler. We'll examine the leadership of dharmic integrity and what it truly means to lead as a role rather than as a person. Now, this entire conceptual framework and script is created by and copyright to Upendra Agnihotram. If this explainer brought you value today, definitely share it with a leader who needs to hear it. See you next time.